Listen, if you're looking for the perfect werewolf manga, this video is your best bet. Humanity is recovering from the aftermath of an exhausting war against the werewolves and witches of chaos. Mad scientist Doctor Frankenstein managed to create the ultimate human weapon to save humanity from collapse. Are you curious to know what happens when they enter a suspicious village in the middle of nowhere? Watch until the end to find out. In the dark forest, Vic slices off a particular monster's arm. After slicing it clean, Vic warns her partner that the villagers are going to be extremely cautious of him now that they have seen his appearance. The towering man is told to pretend to be a frail and injured person so that they can boast a chance of entering the village safely. Vic refers to this person as Monster Son. The scene shifts to the village, where the townsfolk are enjoying their happy lives. Joshua is sulking by himself when the priestess inquires why he's feeling upset. Joshua reveals that he overslept and ended up getting scolded by Mr. Baker for not taking care of the livestock. The priestess consoles him that the quality of the meat depends on a number of things, such as the animal's regular life, so one has to be considerate of those factors. Joshua wonders if the taste really matters so much. The priestess emphasizes that people can differentiate their tastes and that he should work diligently to treat his sister at the upcoming festival. A slightly relieved Joshua agrees. Suddenly, Joshua's sister appears roughened. The boy rushes to inquire about his sister's well-being and reveals that nothing happened to them, but unfortunately, David and Mr. William met their demise. She also explains that they split up into two groups for the hunting. Paired up with Mr. Marcus, the two were stunned by the rumbling in the ground. Marcus wondered if it was some landslide. Suddenly, they heard Mr. William shouting for help. Anne and Marcus rushed to the scene, and upon reaching the site, they discovered a towering man with an electrified skull. They also saw the corpses of David and William, who fell to the horrors of this creature. A frightened Marcus tried to shoot this creature, only for it to dodge with ease. Marcus and Anne quickly ran away after encountering this monster. Deadass, if I saw that thing, I would break Usain Bolt's record if it meant escaping. Anne explains that she managed to escape, even though William and David met their ends. Marcus adds that they can't retrieve their bodies because of the threatening monster. The concerned Joshua questions if it is a kind of monster or a werewolf. Marcus denies the creature being a werewolf, since it has a distinct appearance that differentiates it from a beastly creature. Thanks, Sherlock, that explanation sure helps a lot. Joshua asks if the monster is headed towards their village, and if they should contemplate evacuating at once. Among their terror, the soothing priestess joins the conversation. She reminds them all that the werewolves lurk deep in the forest that surrounds their village, meaning they would end up sacrificing themselves if they entered their territory to escape. The priestess claims that they'll be safe so long as they stay inside the village, which is under the protection of the mountain god, who has ensured them a peaceful life in the village up to this point. She tells them that they will have a festival to worship the mountain god soon, and that they should prioritize their efforts to be granted the protection of their supreme deity. Okay, it's not the best survival tactic, but Miss Makima over here sure seems to be confident. Even though Joshua isn't convinced, the rest of the villagers chime in to vouch for support for the priestess' words. They think that the festival will solve all of their problems, and manage to convince Joshua. Anne faints from her condition as she is still tired. She is told to rest in the meantime, even though Anne is still worried about David and William. Marcus emphasizes that they can't do anything immediately, so they will have to recover them later. LOL, whoever is going to recover those bodies is gonna have balls of steel. Just saying. He also tells them not to worry about the village since they're prepared to patrol properly. Marcus advises her to prepare the festival in the meantime, and that everyone else should trust in the family that has become the village. Later that night, Anne remembers David's words, as he wanted to confess something important before returning to the village. David told her that he trusted her the most in the village, and his words now plague her mind in memory of the boy. The following morning, while the other kids are still grieving the loss of William and David, Anne shows an encouraging attitude, and tells them to work hard. David was the oldest of them and behaved like a leader of the group, so Anne is working hard to replace him and strengthen their morale. A sudden village announcement is made regarding the capture of two suspicious figures. These people are shown to the priestess. They dub them a child and a big man. The crowd attracts the attention of both Anne and Joshua, who gather just behind the priestess. The priestess begins her inquiry and questions where they came from. Vic responds that it isn't any of their concern, as they're travelers who pass by the village and have no business dealing with them. The priestess apologizes for being rude and explains that they've experienced a recent attack by a suspicious monster in the woods that resulted in the loss of two of their people. That is the reason they want to execute an inspection on those who draw near the village. Vic is troubled, but allows herself to be inspected. The girl is cleared of suspicion, so they move towards the hooded man. As the man is taking off his hood, he reveals himself to be a bandaged figure, missing his right arm. Both Joshua and Anne are alarmed by this appearance. At the same time, Vic explains that the man is her relative, who was a soldier in the past and bravely fought in the werewolf wars, sustaining massive injuries in the process. Vic also tells them that his body is bandaged because he is prone to bleeding through his scars. If that's true, that's one badass soldier you don't want to mess with. The priestess is still suspicious and questions if they've encountered a humanoid creature lurking in the forest. Vic denies any such claims. She tells the priestess that they had no choice but to circle the village, as that was their way to go around the path. Vic wants them to be released, but the priestess denies any possibility. She claims that they have an important festival, which is why they don't want any interruptions until the festival has been completed. She offers them a place to stay in the village until the conclusion of the festival. Vic questions if they're being kept for surveillance and interrogation, to which the priestess explains that they'll be provided lodging and meals for their trouble. Vic feigns annoyance and thinks that the villagers would inevitably lock them up with complete disregard for their feelings. The villagers begin to ease in and no longer feel threatened by the two strangers. The bandaged man, in particular, catches the attention of Anne, who is somewhat wary of him. Nah, she's definitely caught on to something. Later, while in the company of each other, Vic and the injured man are greeted by Joshua, who serves them their meal. Vic consumes the meal while the injured man stays silent. Joshua questions if he's going to eat, to which Vic explains that her relative's throat is injured, which is why he can't speak. She tells him that she will answer all questions on his behalf. Joshua gets worked up because the villagers forbid the children from speaking to outsiders, even though Vic reminds him that he is the one who initiated the conversation. Vic questions why he's being cautious since they've only been cooperative thus far. She introduces herself as Victoria but prefers Vic for short. The bandaged guy is introduced as Stein. Joshua returns an introduction and finds himself surprised to learn that Vic is actually a girl. It feels like the author is trying to clarify this earlier in the series than later. Vic shifts the conversation to the fact that the village is secluded from other human settlements. Joshua explains that the village resides in the forest, which means it bears no connection to the outside world. In fact, outsiders are so rare that Vic is Joshua's first experience ever since he came to the village. Vic is surprised to learn that Joshua is also an outsider. Joshua unveils the horrifying story of his past. 3 years ago, his family was passing through the forest. That's when it happened. The carriage succumbed to the weight of a creature from above. What they saw was the sight of nightmarish eyes. The carriage fell into a panic, and the werewolves attacked all of them. When Joshua woke up, he found his family slaughtered by the creature that resembled a fate worse than death. Just saying, not even Batman could beat me to go into that forest. These creatures are sleep paralysis demons. When the two of them woke up, they discovered that the villagers rescued them, which is how they have been living under its protection. The priestess, as well as William and Marcus, along with David, were like family to them. Joshua sheds light on an interesting fact about this village, that all of the children here are actually orphans who have been rescued. He assures Vic that they will be freed after the festival. Vic feels nostalgic hearing his touching story and decides to ramble on one of her own. She talks about an outsider who contributed to the village with his medical skills and knowledge, gaining a good relationship with them. Even with his contributions, the man was burned at the village square for all of them to see. Joshua is mortified and asks why. Vic ambiguously states that there are two types of people in this world. The first type is definite enemies, and the second type pertains to the ones who have yet to become enemies. She strongly believes this Machiavellian idea, as even friends and family can quickly become one's enemies. Vic is interested in amassing worldly power to fight against such a fate. Virgil, come pick up your daughter, she's rambling about power again. Suddenly, Anne barges into their conversation and scolds Joshua for talking to the outsiders. She reminds Joshua of the teachings of the priestess, which is to distrust the ones outside the village. Anne argues that the outside is full of witches and werewolves deceiving people, and warns him against them. Anne still feels alarmed by Stein's watchful gaze and takes Joshua away. The village festival is advancing with its preparations, and Marcus informs Vic that they need Stein. Vic is told to stay in the lodging for the meantime, a gesture that she considers unreasonable. Before he leaves, Vic reminds Stein to be mindful of the purpose of their visit. The villagers are starting to sound suspenseful, I'm not going to lie. Marcus also brought Anne along for the patrol group mission, In the absence of David. In the following scene, Stein quietly follows the hunters as they take them to a narrow path, and reflects that they usually never have outsiders joining them, except Stein, who showed up right after the monster attack incident. She is dubious of his intentions and thinks that he has some connection to the monster she encountered. In the midst of her contemplation, Anne missteps and falls from the edge of the cliff. Stein quickly rushes to help her and grabs her arm, saving her life. In a plot twist, Stein gets stabbed in the throat right before Anne, and then gets kicked off the cliff by Marcus. Anne is left speechless and stunned, while Marcus explains that this is an order from the priestess, as the bandaged man is a bad omen for the village. My red flag detectors are going through the roof right now. Marcus emphasizes that Stein only acted to save her and gain her trust. He once again reminds her that the villagers are her true family and should be prioritized over strangers. Robert, on the other hand, blurts out that Stein intends to help the kids escape from the village and that they shouldn't keep up appearances anymore. Anne is confused, while Robert pitches the idea that they should have dealt with them sooner. Shockingly, Marcus begins to morph into a werewolf as well as Robert. The two demonic entities are eager to devour Anne as their meal. Anne is frightened enough to jump into the cliff to her death in order to escape the wrath of the monsters. This is the first time I've ever seen werewolves look that scary, like that thing is nightmare fuel. Back in the village, Vic cautiously made her way to the top of the roof, where she noted that the werewolves were actually a part of the village. Vic doesn't know their identities and thinks that the villagers are living in a naive reality. She thinks that Joshua is blinded by peace, and because of that, they have all blinded themselves to the dangers that lurk within the group. Vic believes that those who are unable to face reality for what it is will ultimately meet their deaths. Edgy midget looking is probably a redditor with those quotes, bruh. The scene switches to Anne, who is running away with a myriad of questions regarding Marcus and Robert. She battles with the reality that has unfolded before her eyes. Suddenly, one of the werewolves pounces upon her and pins her down. Robert states that he has always had an eye on Anne, ever since she came to the village. Robert is about to devour her when he gets slammed in the face by Stein. Marcus is left alarmed as Stein appears uninjured and has once again saved Anne's life. Stein takes off her hood and rips off his bandages, revealing electrical tubes behind his back. These tubes discharge immense electricity, making him appear like the monster that Marcus and Anne saw in the forest. Anne is horrified by the sight of the beast and has confirmed that he is the monster. Whoa, shocker. Pun intended, haha. Marcus can't comprehend how Stein survived the wound on his neck as well as the fall. Robert, on the other hand, boasts an animalistic drive to slaughter the one who punched him. He jumps off to attack Stein, only for Stein to charge a powerful punch, striking down the beast so hard that it crashes into the tree. Anne is left shocked by Stein's powers. Marcus drops his gun and lunges forth in a full-speed strike to attack Stein. Stein is attacked from all directions by the werewolf's speedy assault. He decides to hammer his fist down into the ground, erupting a massive force that staggers the werewolf in his place. Using this opportunity, Stein delivers a crushing backhand with all of his might, which is enough to put the werewolf out of commission. Now that Marcus is barely clinging to life, Stein grabs him and is about to finish off the beast when suddenly, he notices Anne, who is aiming her gun right at him. Marcus tells Anne to shoot the monster down, as she would be able to deliver a potent shot to his head. He scares Anne by telling her that the monster will feed on her next, and that he is the same beast who massacred David. Marcus enthralls her with the idea of revenge. Anne prepares her shot, while Marcus is enjoying the thought of manipulating her. Finally, Anne pulls the trigger, the outcome of which is left ambiguous for the time being. Returning to the festival of the villagers. The villagers all danced about and celebrated the occasion with a feast. Vic has her watchful eye on them, while Joshua brings her dinner. She notices his attire, which is special for the festival. Vic accepts the meal, while Joshua tells her that the festival is unfortunately going to last for one full day. Joshua brought her food, which was served at the festival, and saved some for Stein. Vic questions if Joshua saved a portion for his sister, to which he agrees. Joshua also talks about the patrol group and how the adults are serious about the festival, since they haven't really eaten anything. Joshua thinks that the mountain god should bless them for their valiant efforts. Vic poses the curious question of the purpose of the festival. Joshua explains that the festival is held every 4 years to offer the harvest they've collected and receive a blessing to dismantle evil forces. It is rich with feasts and dances, and a ritual is conducted at the sacred site where the mountain god lives. Joshua blurts out that he has no idea what happens in the ritual. Vic wants to go to the sacred site, but Joshua tells her they're not allowed to go, except for the priestess. Joshua also explained that permission is needed to leave the lodging. Vic doesn't fancy his straight-laced behavior and drops the bowl onto the floor. It shatters into many pieces. Vic uses a sharp piece to threaten Joshua. She forces him to take her to the sacred site. Whoa, she is not playing around. Before going there, Vic makes a stop near a dried-up well. This is because she had hidden their belongings before entering the village. Vic explains that they couldn't have entered the village or extracted information otherwise. Joshua realizes that he is being played this entire time and questions their real purpose. Vic doesn't answer and forces Joshua to swallow a substance. Vic threatens the boy that it could very well be poison, and if he wants the antidote, he should follow her orders. No, my boy Joshua is really getting the worst treatment. Press F to pay respects to him in the comments. They stumble into the sacred site, which appears to be a cave. Joshua sobs and apologizes to the priestess for his actions. Vic thinks that he's being a crybaby for no reason. They stumble across a skull, which starts with Joshua. Vic points to the creature responsible for the deed, which is revealed to be an enormous werewolf. This terrifying beast shocks Joshua, as he fails to comprehend the appearance of a monster within the sacred site. Vic doesn't seem surprised when a voice greets them from behind. The priestess questions what Joshua is doing here at all. Vic is alerted by her presence and takes note of the other villagers who surround them. The priestess saddeningly reminds Joshua that he has committed a grave sin. Vic lets out a hearty laugh in light of the fact that the priestess doesn't care about the monster before them and is only concerned about their intrusion. She quizzes Joshua on why the priestess is behaving in such a manner and then reveals that the creature before them is none other than the so-called mountain god that has been feasting on the children. Vic also reveals that the food he brought her contained a drug specifically made by a witch, which puts one into a deep sleep right after consumption. This is why the adults never eat it, but the children do. These werewolves were freaking scheming the entire time. WTF. Vic explains that she has quite the experience with handling such drugs before, so she knows them well. That's also why she forced an antidote in his mouth, confirming that it's not actually poison. Vic explains that this region had fallen to werewolf attacks for a number of years, and on each of the sites, massacred bodies of the people remained, except the children weren't ever found. Vic reveals that it's oddly suspicious that the children remained undiscovered, while the adults were brutally massacred. She wonders where all of the children went, and precisely why the village houses so many orphans. Joshua sweats profusely, because he is beginning to understand exactly what's been going on. Rose's face says it all. This man is cooked. Joshua? No. The priestess tries to sway Joshua by reminding him not to trust outsiders. However, the poor boy trembles with so much fear that he doesn't hear her words. The priestess argues that his faith is lacking and unveils her true nature. She is annoyed that they have ruined the meat, so they can't offer anything to the mountain god now. The boy, who is haunted by his thoughts, realizes that they were raised as livestock all along. This crushing realization makes him cry. This is also a callback to the previous interaction he shared with the priestess about raising livestock. It makes it even more messed up. The priestess is done with the conversation and states that they should initiate their ritual. Vic reminds the priestess that if anything happens to her, many will come to hunt them. The priestess explains that they have made a pact with the mountain god and will receive a blessing in return. Not only that, they have crushed everyone who stood in their way for the past decade, thanks to their deity. The priestess regrets not having killed Vic and Stein sooner, as well as Anne. She orders her men to capture them, while Joshua demands to know what they did to his sister. Vic offers another shot at communication, but the humans before her have already begun to transform into monsters. Vic immediately lunges forth and takes out her blades before striking both of them down. The priestess is shocked, while Vic tells Joshua to run. The priestess requests the mountain god's help, and the monster finally awakens. I just know this thing's got like 1000 HP or something. Joshua trips and falls, while Vic reminds him that they don't have time. Joshua is paralyzed with fear and sadness, and thinks that this turnabout must be a cruel joke. Vic questions if he would like to return to the wolves, and whether he should drink the drag and be devoured by the monsters. She tells him that she has no obligation to save the boy, as he doesn't deserve salvation if he is not ready to defy fate. She forces him into a dilemma to choose between dying under a peaceful illusion or struggling in the harsh reality to the end of his life. Invading their conversation is another werewolf that attacks Vic. She is able to dodge his strike, and surprisingly, Joshua is the one who knocks the wolf down, before Vic delivers the killing blow. Unafraid yet determined, Joshua musters his resolve and declares that he will fight for his life. He also startles himself, realizing that he has been carrying someone's arm all along. Suddenly, the cave begins to tremble devastatingly. Vic realizes the upcoming threat and tells Joshua to run for his life. The demonic monster, thought to be the mountain god, runs towards them at a tremendous speed. Vic notices the opening of the cave and questions what's taking her ally so long. Stein leaps from the cliff and prepares a powerful blow, striking down the beast with his mighty punch. Vic gnaws at him for being late. Joshua wakes up after the fall and observes the sight of Stein fighting against the giant monster. Stein punches the beast and receives an attack in return. Joshua doesn't know how someone can fight the mountain god. Anne calls for her brother and the two embrace each other in the end. Anne is relieved that Joshua is safe and the other feels the same. Anne explains that she fired the shot and actually shot down Marcus. This is because she remembers those same eyes that attacked them and killed their parents that fateful day. It was an act of revenge for Anne. Marcus received a brooding flurry of attacks from Stein, who killed him in the end. He then went on to help Anne once more. Joshua realizes that the rest of the villagers are also werewolves, and the purpose of the village has always been to raise the children as livestock. Suddenly, Joshua is about to be attacked by another creature. Vic chimes in to defend him at once and tells them to get serious. It comes as no surprise that the priestess has also been a werewolf all along. She hounds Vic for interfering with their affairs. The priestess believes that the mountain god will protect them from any pest that ruins their paradise. Vic laughs in the face of such a declaration and decides to humor them with the reality of their world. More than 10 years ago, a ruthless war was waged, where werewolves and witches joined forces to attack the humans. 3 years of fierce battles concluded, and the humans were knocked back to the edge of defeat. What saved humanity was a creature that was made by Doctor Frankenstein, a creature dubbed the Monster. This creature had its problems, however, as it became an uncontrollable force. The humans used the might of this beast to massacre the werewolves at the expense of their forces. Soon after the war, Doctor Frankenstein, as well as the creature, vanished. That's how stronger creatures have appeared with Dr. Frankenstein's technology. Vic emphasizes that the mountain god happens to be another one of the horrors that were made thanks to his technology. She laughs at them for thinking such a monster is their saving grace. Vic emphasizes that Stein is a literal god of destruction. In comparison, let's go. She is throwing the trash talk to hype our boy up. Funnily enough, Stein gets knocked back in a defeated state. Vic slanders him for embarrassing her in front of them. Bro was told to cook and burn the entire kitchen. She questions what's bothering them. Vic notices that Stein's throat is injured, and also explains that he was sliced from behind. Thankfully, Stein is able to breathe at once and shows the ability to talk. Anne is left bewildered because she doesn't know how he recovered so fast. She is struck with wonder if Stein is on the level of the mountain god. The priestess hounds them for being sinful against their god. Joshua hears the villagers drawing near, which adds to their list of concerns. Vic explains that there are upwards of 30 adults in the village, which means they'll be in big trouble fighting their numbers. Stein asks her for instructions. Vic explains that if they truly believe in their mountain god, then they should annihilate the creature and crush their will to fight. The priestess is baffled that a dying man is going to contend with a literal god. Stein declares that he is invincible as long as Vic is there to help him. Can't deny that this line was just heat. He rejoins his missing arm, which Vic helps reattach with her healing powers. The priestess is stunned because Vic is actually revealed to be a witch boasting magical powers. Vic commands Stein to finish the battle in one attack. Stein charges up with incomparable energy and launches himself at an incredible speed. The mountain god replies with a counterstrike, but Stein is faster and manages to knock him down. Vic is hoping for Stein to finish the battle before he is consumed senseless by his might. Stein plows a flurry of consecutive strikes that push back the mountain god. The beast manages to break Stein's arm, but even then, he plows ahead with devastating attacks. Vic continues to heal him, while Stein releases even more attacks. Every time he gets injured, Vic is there to heal him in an instant, no matter the severity of the injury. The priestess knows that they're incapable of stopping him if he heals at once. This guy is playing like a DPS, while Vic is healing him as his support. What an epic duo. In order to stop them, the priestess tries to attack Vic from behind. Vic ducks down and allows Stein to grab her face as he tosses her into the mountain god with a powerful punch. Both the priestess and the mountain god experience immense pain and are at last defeated. Meanwhile, the remaining werewolf villagers also arrive at the scene and are shocked to see their mountain god and beloved priestess defeated. Stein glares at them as the monster who killed their respectful ruler, and as a consequence, the werewolves all scatter from the site. Joshua and Anne are relieved and watch over the victors of the battle, who are the cooperative forces of a witch and a monster. This manga is so underrated. Like the video if you want a part 2 in the future. Having slayed the mountain god, Stein observes its corpse while Vic awaits his analysis. Stein reveals that he couldn't see clearly, though he could sense that the doctor's destination was coming from the south. Vic is frustrated that they had to do all of that work, only to be fed such little information. She tells him to work harder, as he is the only one who can detect information after his contact with other monsters. Vic thinks that their next destination is the south. Stein asks about Anne and Joshua. Vic explains that they're helping out the remaining orphans, who fell unconscious to the effects of the drugs. Now that all of the adults have disappeared, Joshua wonders what they should do, and succumbs to their grim reality as she doesn't have an answer. She and her brother have lived their lives thinking that this village was a haven, and can't fathom how it was an excuse to raise them like livestock, to be devoured late. The past 3 years of their lives have been filled with lies. Is it just me, or are these guys the worst among us players? They got gaslighted for 3 years, that's insane. Stein and Vic hover over the scene, but Vic advises him not to interfere. She reminds him that their key objective was to defeat the monster of the mountain, as well as obtain information about the doctor. Even though they managed to save the kids, it wasn't really their priority to do so. She wants him to continue their journey, but Stein, being Stein, paces ahead to talk to Anne. He tells Anne that he has something for her. Stein reveals that he was entrusted with a note by someone who died a day before yesterday. Anne realizes that it must have been David. What really happened that day was that, while Stein and Vic were venturing into the forest, they heard the sound of a werewolf devouring someone. Stein quickly rushed to save them, and managed to fend off the wolf. However, when William hears Anne drawing near, he returns to his human form, and lets himself be crushed by Stein. This sight left Marcus and Anne terrified as they ran away. Stein begged Vic to save the boy's life. Vic examined David's condition, but ultimately judged that it was far too late to save him. Stein showed a face of frustration, unable to save David's life. A terrified boy imparted to them the knowledge that the village was filled with werewolves. David spoke of Anne and begged them to save the children, and to let them escape. Stein carried on David's wishes and allowed the boy to die with a smile on his face. Vic was surprised that there was a village existing in the middle of nowhere, and thought that the monster was lurking in a similar area. She thought that the werewolves had companions around the area as well. Stein begged Vic to help David's family. Vic argued against his wishes, because he was naively trying to help someone he didn't even know. Stein managed to convince Vic, who told him that they were going to gather information on the monsters and investigate the village. Although she didn't promise to help the villagers, she did advise him to stay quiet while she concocted a cover story for them. She knew that extracting information would be difficult, so Vic took extra precautions and shaped Stein's appearance. Knowing that an injured person wouldn't be considered a threat, she sliced his arm. She may be a midget, but she's willing to go to any length to reach her goals. I wouldn't want to become her enemy. Back to the present, Stein tells Anne that David entrusted them with delivering the map to navigate through the forests. Stein affirms that David probably already knew the village's secret, which is why he wanted to help the children escape. Stein emphasizes that the boy is their true family, as he selflessly wants to help the other children, even at the risk of his doom. Despite this village being a lie, built from the ground up by the werewolves, Stein thinks that their love for each other reigns supreme. He advises the children to live on, as though this world is filled with lies. They will eventually find true peace someday. Stein is as if Leonardo da Vinci painted with his words. Saying this, he departs with Vic. Joshua and Anne offer their thanks for saving their lives, and question if they will be seeing each other again. Vic tells them to forget about their existence, as they are nothing more than a vicious witch and a Frankenstein's monster. Wherever they go, destruction follows, and so Vic hopes they never encounter the kids again. Anne inquires what they are to do from this point forward. Donning a smile on her face, Vic humors the idea of flipping the world upside down. That's a badass exit, if I've seen one. In the city of the Upelia Kingdom, a woman suspected to be a witch is running from the guards. She frantically weaves her knife against a man, who stops her advance and pins her to the ground. The woman begs to be let go, and the guards soon surround them. The man tells her to quiet down, as she has nowhere to run. The woman curses them and asks if he is a marshal, but he still wants to curse everyone in the town. She is knocked out by one of the guards, while Joseph, the man who pinned her down, is praised for his efforts by Commander Howard. Commander Howard notes that Joseph's skills haven't reduced even a bit, despite his retirement. To confirm whether the woman is a witch or not, they use a silver pendant and connect it with her body. Commander Howard declares that the woman is indeed a witch, as witches and werewolves inflame upon touching silver. The townsfolk are grateful for the existence of the marshals, as well as Commander Howard, as they were able to rat out another monster hiding among them. Howard addresses the citizens of Wolfspan Valley and tells them that they have sentenced hundreds of witches and werewolves who are hiding among their people. They've driven them to death, and as such, the marshals will preserve and protect the sanctity of their town. The crowd supports the marshals and chants, "Glory to the Upelia Kingdom" upon this successful discovery. The scene shifts back to Vic and Stein. 2 months have passed since the defeat of the mountain god Werewolf, and they have yet to pick up any clues that lead to Dr. Frankenstein. Stein advises her not to rush, because they should keep a cool head in their operations. Vic is annoyed, and finds herself even more peeved by the rain. Stein contrasts her opinion and thinks that the view after the rain is rather pleasant. He welcomes the scenery that will settle in the aftermath of the rain. Vic proceeds to step into a puddle of dirt, muddying her shoes. Stein once again positively encourages her, as it could have been a hunter trap that would have led to Vic's injury. Man, Stein is just the purest thing in the whole world. They end up finding the same mark they made earlier. Vic realizes that they're pretty much lost in the forest. Stein chimes in to tell her that this detour will spring a meaningful encounter and that it isn't a waste of time. Vic is done with his goody two-shoes optimism and kicks him in the rear for being positive all the time. Suddenly, they hear the sound of gunshots coming from nearby. It is revealed that Joseph is stuck in a tough spot while protecting someone against a pack of werewolves. Stein wants to help, but Vic reminds him that he's constantly using his powers. Because the royal army always chases them, Vic doesn't want him to transform to save others. She issues an order to his master not to use his powers without her permission. Stein hears the cries of the ones in trouble and immediately rushes to save them. Vic is shocked that he is already disobeying her. Stein states that he doesn't mind not using his powers and jumps down to protect them. Stein lands on a werewolf and saves their life. He prepares to fight the rest of the beasts. The hungry pack of werewolves viciously attack Stein. Stein, being a simple man, charges a fist and knocks back one of the werewolves into another. As he is about to be attacked by another werewolf, a blade penetrates the creature's head, killing it at once. Vic joins the battle and reminds him that he isn't reliable without using his powers, as even his movement is hindered. Stein goes on to attack 2 more werewolves, reflecting that his body, indeed, doesn't move as well if he doesn't use his powers. However, even with that handicap, Stein is capable of crushing opponents of this level, and punches another werewolf whirling to the ground. One werewolf tries to take him from his blind spot, so Vic slashes the beast from behind, allowing Stein the opportunity to smash him to the ground. He decimates its remains, and suddenly finds his arm hesitating in its function. As he is compromised, Stein allows the werewolf to bite down on his shoulder. He grabs the beast tight and instructs Vic to deal the finishing blow. Vic arrives and impales the last werewolf. The fight is over in a flash. The woman thanks them for saving their lives and is worried Stein got injured because of them. Stein tells them that it's not a severe wound, so he should be fine. Bro really said, this is just a mortal wound. Vic turns to Joseph and comments on how brave he is for gathering wild plants in a forest full of werewolves. Joseph explains that they've never experienced werewolf attacks this close since they're near town. He also corrects them that these are actually mad wolves instead of werewolves. Mad wolves basically share a similar body and strength to werewolves, but they don't have the ability or the intelligence to disguise themselves as humans. They're basically the dumber version, if that helps. Joseph explains that the 2 types of wolves are completely different in their characteristics, and even though it's widely accepted that they're the same, Vic, on the other hand, signals Stein that they should go. This is because Vic has deduced Joseph has connected with the military to know the difference, and doesn't want to make things complicated. Stein happily bids them farewell, and explains they're heading to town. The girl questions if they're headed to Wolfspan Valley. Vic pauses and asks if they know the way there. The woman explains that they're actually residents of the town, and they can easily guide them. Vic doesn't want to cooperate, and tells them they're in a hurry as Stein has a stomachache. Stein adds to her excuse by acting like he's in agonizing pain that you only experience after eating Taco Bell. After receiving directions, Stein and Vic resume their journey. Vic kicks him for disobeying her orders. As soon as they step near the city, the two are approached by guards. The guards surround them at once for an inspection. Vic questions what they're after. Commander Howard explains that it is a rule for each traveler to be inspected upon entering the town to determine their identities. Soldiers surround Vic and Stein under Commander Howard's control. This is obviously problematic for them, as the inspection is going to reveal their identities. Vic questions if Howard is truly even capable of doing such a thing. She thinks that they should comply, and cautiously observes her surroundings. She knows that they can escape behind, except the guns are going to pose big trouble. Even though muskets can only shoot once, they're likely to get hit in such a tight space. There is also the problem that Stein could easily get shot in a vital area and suffer grieving injuries. She thinks that their only option of survival in this situation is taking Commander Howard as a hostage. Suddenly, Joseph and May rush to the scene, where they report to Commander Howard. This helps Vic confirm her suspicion that Joseph is truly from the military. Joseph explains that he has something to say regarding the matter. Joseph reveals their previous attack by mad wolves in the forest and how the two individuals saved them. Joseph emphasizes that even if they find weapons on Vic and Stein, they are used in battle to save their lives. Commander Howard praises them for defeating the mad wolves. Vic pleasantly explains that Stein is amazing as he, too, is a former soldier who has experienced real combat. They're lucky these guys pulled up. Stein backs up her story and assists Vic. Vic questions the kind of inspection method that they will be using. Commander Howard explains that he just wants them to touch a silver pendant with their skin. Howard emphasizes that if they were human, nothing would happen, and inflammation would only occur if they were disguised as witches or werewolves. Howard wants to determine their identities based on this method. Things are not looking great for Vic. Stein is specifically worried for Vic. Vic, on the other hand, isn't worried at all, and happily offers her hand to be inspected at once. Vic uncovers her arm and allows Howard to execute the inspection. Howard draws the pendant near her skin and realizes that there isn't a problem. He thinks that they should be clear. Stein is left questioning how this really happened. Vic tells Stein to do the same. Stein agrees, and both of them are conclusively inspected to be free of any suspicion. Commander Howard apologizes for his interruption and tells them that it's a procedure used against the werewolves and witches that infiltrate their town. In fact, they captured 3 witches in 1 month and strengthened their security. Howard also respectfully salutes them for saving Joseph, who is also a former soldier. Howard allows them to enter Wolfspan Valley, but seems to have a watchful eye on the black-haired girl. Whoa, something tells me this man isn't convinced at all. Stein ends up vomiting because of the tense atmosphere. He was sure they would get caught, and questioned if the pendant truly revealed a witch's nature. He doesn't understand how she didn't get exposed, and wonders if she used some kind of trick. Vic pauses and is about to explain, when they get interrupted by Joseph and May. May wants to express her thanks for saving their lives, and offers them the opportunity to join them at their restaurant. Stein immediately agrees without Vic's opinion. May is concerned because the restaurant is a little far away. She is also concerned because Stein had a stomachache, which was probably because he was holding it in. Vic alleviates May's concern by shoving Stein under the bus. She tells them that Mr. Bandaged Man over here actually helped himself on the side of the road. Poor Stein is left embarrassed by Vic's words. The girl got him back by calling him a road dumper. May welcomes them into their restaurant and tells them to have a seat. She explained that the restaurant was built on the outskirts of the town, so they didn't really acquire a lot of customers, but their food was still top-notch. She wants to take care of their injuries at first, but Vic tells them it won't be necessary, as she can do it herself. Vic turns to Stein, while May decides to prepare them a meal. Vic takes off his hood and notices the wound. She is surprised to note that his body is already regenerating on its own. Vic mentions that she doesn't have to heal Stein with such small injuries, as his body is capable of recovering on its own. Joseph pops open a bottle and drinks to his content. May warns him not to drink and asks for help in the kitchen. Joseph shouts at her, but May eventually convinces him to join her. Vic carefully notes their interactions, while Stein thinks that they act like a family. Vic notices Joseph's uniform as a former soldier. May finally readies them a full meal and tells them to eat to their heart's content. Stein asks if she made all of it, so May explains that she received help from Joseph. Stein tries out their vegetable soup and finds it very pleasant. His hand trembles, and he even holds a tiny spoon. Joseph mentions how Stein's body is covered in scars and he's entirely messed up. He knows that Stein walks unsteadily and his hands shake. Joseph is implored to ask if Stein served in the Blood Moon War. 2 decades ago, this was the same war in which witches and werewolves fought against humanity, rendering many losses to Kingdom Eupelia for 3 years. Stein confirms that he served in the same war. Joseph instantly stands up to pay his respects to Stein, thanking him for serving in the war as one of the soldiers who risked their lives to protect their country. Joseph roars, "Glory to the Kingdom of Eupelia." Since Stein has to keep up the act, he is compelled to do the same, although in an awkward manner. Stein asks if Joseph also served in the same war. Joseph explains that while he wasn't on the front lines, his unit had innumerable encounters with horrifying creatures. He had seen everything, the sight of his comrades mercilessly killed before him. His entire unit was wiped out, and he was the only one who survived. Joseph saw a pile of bodies, distorted by the wicked magic of the witches. He saw their bodies torn to shreds because of the werewolves. There were missing limbs of soldiers as they wailed in agony. Joseph bears incredible resentment toward the monsters and thinks that they should be brought to death and exterminated for good. He also ventures into a sensitive topic concerning a witch who betrayed him and ruined his life. May joins the conversation and advises him to allow the guests to enjoy their meals in peace. Joseph calms down while Stein asks about the kind of relationship they share. He knows that they are supposed to be father and daughter, but doesn't understand why they call each other by name. Joseph explains that May is an abandoned child that he took in and would prefer if she moved out. May knows that Joseph is just being himself and playfully argues with him. Stein is still of the opinion that they are like family, while May asks for the purpose of their visit. Vic explains that they're in search of someone as they were hired to do so. This is, of course, another cover-up story that she made. Vic explains that this specific person causes trouble wherever they go. Although she can't give out any precise details, she asks May if she has spotted any unusual occurrences related to someone. May emphasizes that she is at a loss and thinks that they should find something in town. Joseph confirms that there isn't anything strange inside the town either, as the garrison protecting them is the best to ensure peace. Vic knows that Joseph is holding them in impressive regard because of their track record. Joseph explains that the peace of the town is actually preserved, thanks to Commander Howard's achievements. Howard is the head of the garrison and also the town's commander, capable of identifying witches and werewolves disguised as humans. In fact, his ability is so great that they've located over 100 such occurrences. Vic and Stein are stunned. Joseph explains that he worked under Commander Howard nearly a decade ago, and they use silver to identify humans from monsters. Joseph is impressed by Howard's ability to capture the monsters before they could even commit crimes in the first place, as he has seen the arrests happen firsthand. Joseph reveals another detail, that the creatures disguised as humans beg for their lives even after being caught, as if to pretend that they were innocent. Joseph calls it a disgusting attempt, while Stein carefully observes Vic's reaction. Vic agrees that it is truly disgusting, and goes on to ask about the capture of the 100 witches. She questions how it was even possible for them to handle the large number. Joseph explains that Commander Howard surrenders the captives to a particular unit residing in the capital that ordinary people haven't heard of. This particular unit is actually the Silver Hunters, which specializes in exterminating werewolves and witches alike. Stein and Joseph are shocked to hear of this. While May is cleaning up, Stein discusses the matter with Vic, who explains that the Silver Hunters are somehow connected to the garrison, and are the same unit hunting Stein as a product of Doctor Frankenstein's research. In fact, they're also the same unit who killed Vic's mother. In the next scene, we see a soldier of the Silver Hunter unit effortlessly dismantling a number of werewolves all by himself. He saves a boy and his mother, and declares that he's from the kingdom's special task force, who promised to protect humanity from monsters.